Imagine a world where a computer decides whether you live or die in just 90 minutes. No lawyers, no jury, no appeals, just an AI judge analyzing your life, your memories, and every camera in the city. And if the probability of your guilt stays high, the chair you're sitting on will execute you. This is the terrifying story of Detective Chris, a man accused of murdering his own wife, who must prove his innocence before time runs out. The story begins many years in the future, when rising unemployment and homelessness have pushed Los Angeles into a massive crime epidemic. Prisons are so overcrowded that the government creates red zones to contain dangerous criminals. Even then, hundreds of police officers are dying every day on duty. So the government introduces a new system called MERS Court. In this system, an advanced AI judge decides who is innocent and who deserves death. The reason is simple: traditional courts take too long. Now, criminals receive their verdict within hours of their arrest. Within just 2 years, the program has executed 18 criminals, reduced crime by 68%, saved millions in taxpayer money, and made people feel safe again. Then we see a courtroom. Detective Chris suddenly wakes up. He's tied to a chair, and in front of him a promotional video about the MERS program is playing on a screen. Moments later, the AI judge Maddox appears on the screen and announces that the trial can begin because Chris has finally sobered up. She explains that Chris had been unconscious for nearly 6 hours. Then she asks him to swear that everything he says will be the truth. Chris places his hand on a Bible and takes the oath. And then Maddox reveals something shocking. Chris is accused of murdering his own wife, Nicole. Body cam footage appears. Police officers are seen entering Chris's home. They find Nicole lying on the floor covered in blood, while their daughter Britt cries nearby. Nicole had been stabbed with a knife. When officers asked who attacked her, she named Chris. Hearing this, Chris is completely horrified. Maddox explains that no one else was inside the house at the time except Chris. Chris insists that this is impossible. When he searches the internet, he sees that every news channel is reporting his arrest. Ironically, the news also shows Chris publicly supporting the MERS program. In fact, Chris and his partner Jack were the officers who captured David, the first criminal ever executed by MERS. Maddox then asks Chris what he wants to say in court. Chris declares that he is innocent. But after analyzing the evidence, Maddox calculates that there is a 97.5% probability that Chris is guilty. She tells him that if he wants to avoid execution, he must lower that number to 92% or less. He has only 90 minutes to do it. To help him defend himself, Maddox gives Chris access to every camera in the city, every database, and the ability to connect to anyone's device. But if he fails, the chair he's sitting on will electrocute him to death. A timer appears on the screen. The countdown begins. Maddox starts presenting the evidence. According to her analysis, Chris arrived at work at 8:51 a.m. But instead of getting out of his car, he drove back home. Nicole refused to open the door and told him to speak through his lawyer. Angry, Chris punched a camera and then used his key to enter the house. Nicole tried to push him out before the door closed. Maddox fast-forwards the footage and reveals that Chris stayed inside the house for 26 minutes. Shortly after that, their daughter Britt returned from a friend's house and screamed when she saw her mother. Investigators concluded that the stab wound was delivered by a right-handed person. The deep wound damaged Nicole's spine and punctured her liver. Chris's clothes were also found with fresh blood stains. After leaving the house, Chris went to a bar and started drinking heavily. But he keeps insisting that everything is a lie. Security footage from the bar shows Chris extremely drunk and arguing with police officers who try to arrest him. They even use a taser on him. But Chris still doesn't stop. He runs outside and tries to steal someone's car, but the officers tackle him and he eventually loses consciousness. Chris says he remembers none of this. Maddox blames the memory loss on alcohol. Chris asks if he can speak with his daughter Britt. But according to the rules of the trial, witnesses can only be contacted through calls, and people under 18 are not allowed. Britt is currently staying with her grandparents. However, the rules allow someone connected to the victim to send a message requesting a call. Chris struggles to figure out what to write. Finally, he asks Maddox to send an automatic message to Britt. If she trusts her father, he says she'll call. Meanwhile, Chris is allowed to contact his sponsor from Alcoholics Anonymous, a man named Rob. Rob angrily asks why Chris didn't call him when he felt like drinking again. Rob actually worked with Nicole. When Nicole failed to show up for work, Rob was the one who called the police. Maddox then displays the full history of Chris and Nicole's relationship. They fell in love 20 years ago, married 3 years later, and soon had their daughter Britt. For many years, their life was happy. But everything changed when Chris's partner Ray was killed during a police operation. After that, Chris fell back into alcohol addiction. Slowly, it began destroying the family. Nicole even started thinking about divorce. Messages sent to friends and family show that in the last 6 months alone, Chris had lost his temper 57 times. Later, Chris sees a video of Britt talking to a girl he doesn't recognize. He learns that Britt secretly had social media accounts where she posted party outfits. In the video, Britt says her mother is crying and that her father often becomes violent after drinking. Soon after, Britt finally calls Chris. She's crying badly. Chris tells her he didn't kill her mother, but her grandfather forces her to hang up. Maddox reminds Chris that 1 hour and 8 minutes remain. Chris quickly calls his partner Jack, who is still investigating the crime scene. He asks her to show him every corner of the house. A digital reconstruction of the crime scene appears. In the living room, a broken vase lies on the floor. In the kitchen, there are bloody footprints from Britt. Blood marks on the walls indicate a violent struggle. A broken plate suggests Nicole tried to defend herself. One knife is missing from the kitchen knife set, the likely murder weapon. Chris's fingerprints are on it. Chris argues that it's his kitchen, so of course his fingerprints would be there. Investigators also found hair, skin cells, and DNA matching Chris. Chris then checks Nicole's phone records. He remembers she was texting someone after their argument. But strangely, there are no calls or texts at that time. Then Chris remembers Nicole had a second work phone. Maddox didn't know about it. Using Chris's call history, they locate the number. Jack hears a ringtone nearby and follows it to a car outside. She breaks the window and retrieves the phone. But the phone is unregistered, bought on the black market. It only contacted one other unregistered number. Maddox calls that number. The person immediately hangs up, but the call is enough to trace the location. Jack jumps onto her flying bike and heads there. Eventually, the phone leads to a hotel where a man named Patrick tries to escape through the back door. After a chase, police catch him. Patrick claims he did nothing. He admits he had been dating Nicole secretly, but says he was at work during the murder. Security footage confirms his alibi. He is arrested only for running from the police. Ironically, because Nicole was cheating on Chris, the AI now believes Chris has an even stronger motive. His guilt probability rises to 98%. As the investigation continues, new clues appear. Chris discovers someone at Nicole's company had been falsifying stock records to hide 300 kilograms of missing chemicals. These chemicals could be used to make extremely dangerous materials in the red zones. Further investigation reveals that a man named Holt had argued with Nicole about the missing chemicals. But Holt eventually claims the real thief was Rob, the same Rob from Alcoholics Anonymous. Soon police discover something horrifying. Rob has been secretly manufacturing bombs using the stolen chemicals. And there's another shocking truth. Rob's brother was David, the very first criminal executed by the MERS system. The same man Chris had helped arrest. Rob had befriended Chris as part of a long revenge plan. Police locate Rob driving a truck loaded with explosives. Even worse, Rob has kidnapped Chris's daughter Britt and is holding her inside the truck. If the truck explodes, an entire city block could be destroyed. Chris's murder probability finally drops to 0%. Maddox offers to stop the trial, but Chris refuses. He wants to keep system access so he can stop Rob and save the city. A massive police chase begins. Rob drives recklessly through traffic. Cars crash. News helicopters broadcast the chase live. Police try multiple roadblocks, but Rob crashes through them. A SWAT helicopter attempts to land an agent on the truck, but fails. Eventually, Jack orders Rob to be shot, even if Britt dies. Chris begs her not to do it. Finally, the truck crashes into the courthouse building. The timer on Chris's execution chair reaches 0. But at the last moment, Maddox stops the execution. Chris rushes into the building. A final confrontation begins. Rob holds Britt hostage with a detonator. Chris fights him. Britt bites Rob's hand. During the struggle, Chris disables the detonator. He points a gun at Rob. But before Chris can act, Jack suddenly shoots Rob. Before dying, Rob reveals one final truth. On the night David was arrested, David had actually been on a phone call that proved his innocence. But someone destroyed that evidence. Maddox checks the records and discovers something shocking. The officer who arrested David was Jack. Jack had thrown David's phone into the river to hide the evidence. Her goal was to prove that the MERS system worked, even if it meant sacrificing innocent people. Chris angrily tells her, "A city doesn't just need safety, it needs justice." Jack is arrested. Chris runs to his daughter and hugs her. Meanwhile, Maddox realizes something terrible. The AI system had executed an innocent man. Chris calmly tells her, "Even humans make mistakes, and AI can learn from them too."